Star Citizen 4.5 is in the PTU, and it's likely going to go live either late next week or early the following week. I would say following week is the 15th on Monday. Yeah, I would say they're probably going to try and put it out live on next week. So sometime between the 8th and 12th, and then get one more patch or at least a hot fix out by the 19th to sort of get things into a better place. Now, there's a lot to be said about a patch release in December. I think Star Citizen 3.12 was a December release. I don't actually remember. Yeah, it was December 17th. This is actually the hot fix. So you'll hear people say that they're going to drop this patch and then ditch. They don't. That's just not what they do. They literally will make people work during the holidays to make sure that there's at least a hot fix that goes out to get things at least into a place where like you can play through the game. Last year was a little different because they did a live preview. I don't remember how the live servers functioned when the live preview was up for 4.0, but usually when they're running two versions of the game, it runs not as great. So if they split their load like that, yeah, it runs less. But 3.12, I don't remember this being a bad patch over the release. In fact, we got things like the tractor beam for the first time, so it was really interesting. Reputation was in, but it wasn't visible, and space station refining. All of this again was done once in 3.12, and then again during a hotfix. Now, the next patch, I believe, after that released in December was 3.16. Yes, December 22nd. So 3.16, interestingly enough, was actually a pretty solid patch because it built on the code base of 3.15. So the reason that we've had so much stability this year is because they've kept the same general code base from the engine throughout the year and built on it. And that means there's not as many big patches that keep coming out and messing things up. The same thing happened with 3.15 because it came out and it introduced the inventory for the first time. It made the medical changes to the game. They decided we'll stick to that same code base for 3.16, and that allowed them to maintain some stability while fixing up the patches, or rather the big releases that had come out at the time. So again, this was another December patch that honestly it came out and it wasn't that bad. It did come out pretty late. This was a December 22nd patch. So the problems that did come out didn't get as fixed, but I don't remember it being like a terrible update. Now, as is mentioned in chat, 3.18 is another story. But if you look at 3.18, you will see that it didn't release until March 10th. And so it wasn't really the end of the year patch that suddenly ruined everything. It was a bad patch. I'll give you that much. The patch that came out before it, I think, was 3.17.4. I want to say that would have been November 17th, so maybe 0.5. Was there a 0.5? Yes, there was. But that was in January. So yeah, the most recent patch would have been this one, released in November 17th. So in 2022, they also didn't do that. The idea that a patch is going to come out in December, ruin everything, and just leave us hopeless for the whole break is kind of a myth that lives on because we've had one or two bad releases, especially earlier on during like the 3.4 and 3.8 times. They would have bad releases and then they would kind of ditch. But at this point, even if there is a bad release, people will stay on the clock and still work on it. Bless their souls. I hope they're getting paid overtime for that. So that being said, let's take a look at this year's December update. It's going to be 4.5, and we know a lot about it already, like the engineering updates that are coming to it. But there's some interesting stuff in here. Besides some new ship that's going to come out, might be the Hermes, might be something else that we don't know about. We've got a loot refresh, rebalancing loot at various sandbox locations and introducing previously Wiccolo exclusive rewards to the loot pool. I think this is going to keep happening. I don't think Wiccolo is a permanent addition to the game that is going to dictate how that part of the game works. I think Wiccolo is one of many, and we'll generally be able to get a lot of things from loot in stores that are specific to factions. So like, instead of needing to go to a specific faction, work up your reputation, and get some kind of faction reward for them, maybe you could just go out to the bunkers that are in the area of that faction and find it via loot. Different ways to get different stuff. While it's annoying right now that Wiccolo is super exclusive and his requirements are kind of ridiculous, I don't really think that's going to be a long-term way that this game works. Rebalancing the loot is great because, you know that? For people like myself who are playing the game mainly just to jump on loot and go find cool stuff, it keeps drawing you to the newest location over and over again. This is nice because now it's going to feel like you can choose what you actually want to do and get the stuff that is interesting still. And as we'll see in a little bit here, a lot of new attachments coming in that'll be in the loot pool, I think. So there are new ships coming from Wiccolo in 4.5. Speaking of the guy, it looks like they're going to bring in the Aegis Idris, which has been talked about and controversified. Anvil Asgard, which came out in May, I believe. The Prospector is... It's funny. This thing's a tank right now. The Agro Raft, the L21 Wolf, which I also believe has been added into shops. So that's cool. They're all going to have upgraded components and unique base liveries. A unique military L21 Wolf can also be unlocked by completing other Wiccolo ship offerings. These rewards can be obtained by completing Wiccolo's contracts. Again, I would not focus too much on the fact that so much of this stuff is going to Wiccolo. I'm not a doctor or a game dev, but this really feels like Wiccolo is just their chuck it in and test how it is to earn kind of thing. Like, I think all this kind of stuff is going to be available around the game from different factions and stuff. All right, Wiccolo Rebalance. Adding a variety of new ships to Wiccolo alongside Rebalance effort required to earn Wiccolo rewards. So just looking at the stuff you need to do to get through Wiccolo. This is, I think, yeah, again, it's testing stuff. They're trying to find the right balance of effort that it takes for these things. Don't not give your feedback. I would just say focus on like giving the feedback about what's going on with Wiccolo. Is it too hard to earn things? Why does this make sense? Obviously, the one that's really good is like, we need better ways to turn stuff into this guy. But ultimately, I think this is the Wiccolo initiative is actually really helping them out. All right, Meteor. The Meteor. Make dinosaurs Meteor. Implementing an executive ship as a reward for completing a contested zone by unlocking the executive hangar. Just putting the Meteor in some of the pyro stuff. New weapon attachments. This is one of the really exciting ones, in my opinion. Implementing a host of new attachments, including a low zoom volt optics with charge and heat measurement readings, low zoom Clausen-Werner scopes, new barrel attachments with scorched and tweaker power levels, as well as a new tactical volt flashlight. So this means basically just more things to customize your guns with, but in ways that will definitely make them feel a lot different than what we've been doing so far. Like one scope or another is kind of cool, but these are looking more interesting for sure. Zach Priest is one of the people who works on this stuff and has put it in the game. He is looking for feedback on this. I asked him where to get these. Who knows? Probably somewhere. Oh, we'll find it. But this is like one of the ones that detects heat and sees the charge on the gun you're using. And you can see it from the side here. They've got the 4x as well. And just like a holographic sight. There are, I think, 9 attachments. So scopes and underbarrel attachments coming into the game. And it's the first big addition in a good long while. They did the tweaker and the scorched stuff, obviously. But as far as a formalized entry into the weapon attachments additions, I don't think they've really done one of these since like the very beginning. Maybe back here at some point. I don't even know what section it would be in. Weapon attachments V2. Yeah, this was the last time they did like a big update of weapon attachments. So it's not huge, but I think it's these kinds of little things that eventually add up and make for a lot more interesting stuff to find and customizations in the game. They've also done some ship flight tuning, snub fighters and interceptors. Basically the same thing they did with the heavy fighters and the light fighters. I think they could probably go further in making these feel a little bit more differentiated from each other, but I'm glad they are going through and giving them a touch right now. After engineering, they'll have to do it again, but this keeps the game playable. That's about it. There's also physical helmets on there. This is just showing the stuff that they've added to the roadmap as of this last update last week, but there's also engineering gameplay, of course, which we know about. It's AI improvements, which are going to differentiate FPS AI in the way that they play. Some of them will rush, some of them will hold back. Snipers, shotgunners, different tactics and different difficulties. More variety. It's stuff we heard about at CitizenCon 2024. New hairstyles, as there always are. The Vulkan render improvements. I actually just had a long talk with 10pound42 about that on the podcast you can check out. Engineering gameplay, which we're about to jump into and test. That comes along with fire hazards. We covered the loot refresh, the Wiccolo rebalance, and then finally physical helmets, which could mean that physical armor is coming in soon. Physical armor coming in soon would mean suit lockers coming in soon. Suit lockers coming in soon would mean loadouts for players, which would mean one-click additions of all the stuff that you've been wearing so you don't have to take forever to equip yourself again. That means storing your loadouts inside of your spaceships. And since spaceships aren't going to be blowing up as much, maybe keeping your stuff all in the spaceship anyways if they can get all their persistent stuff fixed. That also means, like, it does fall in line also with the fact that they're doing the inventory stuff right now, which is also messing around with loadouts. In general, this could be a good sign. It could be just, you know, one little addition, or it could be the canary in the coal mine. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what goes on with armor. But that is a look at 4.5, an early look, a preview. And we'll see if it does go live next week and cover what does or does not make it.